Hello and welcome to my channel. I hope you enjoy this story. I'm going to try and upload a new story each day. The Spectral Sculptor Studio. Holly Arnold had always been drawn to the Isle of Wight, its rolling hills and cliffside views, its windswept beaches and ancient ruins. When she inherited an old, seaside studio from her estranged uncle, she saw it as a sign that her destiny lay within the island's mists and mysteries. Despite warnings from locals about the studio's dark history, Holly's curiosity and artistic drive led her to ignore the tales and venture into her new workspace. The studio stood on a rugged cliff overlooking the tumultuous sea, a grand structure of stone and aged wood. It seemed almost alive, with ivy creeping up its sides and the wind whistling through its broken windows. As Holly stepped inside, she was struck by the sheer number of sculptures filling the space. Some were magnificent, capturing the essence of life in cold, hard stone, while others seemed twisted and grotesque, as if the artist had been consumed by madness. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding, and Holly couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She tried to focus on cleaning and organizing the space, but her mind kept drifting to the strange sensation she felt as she moved among the sculptures. It was as if the spirits of her predecessors lingered in the studio, their unfinished works and unfulfilled desires haunting every corner. Determined to make the studio her own, Holly set up her tools and began working on a new piece. She felt an unusual connection to the stone, her hands moving with a precision and speed she had never known before. As the days passed, her sculptures took on a life of their own, each one more lifelike and expressive than the last. Holly found herself working late into the night, unable to stop as the spirits of the past seemed to guide her hands. One night, as she chiseled away at a particularly stubborn piece of marble, Holly heard a whisper. She looked around, but saw no one. The whisper grew louder, forming words she couldn't quite understand. It sounded like a chant, a plea, a warning. Her heart pounded in her chest as the room grew colder. Shadows seemed to move on their own, twisting and stretching towards her. Holly tried to shake off the fear, but the whispers continued, growing more insistent. She felt the presence behind her, cold and malevolent. She spun around, but there was nothing there. Yet the feeling of being watched, of being judged, was stronger than ever. She turned back to her sculpture, only to find it had changed. The face she had been carving was no longer her own design, but a distorted, anguished visage that seemed to scream silently. Panicking, Holly tried to destroy the sculpture, but the marble resisted her efforts, as if it had a will of its own. The whispers turned into voices, each one distinct and filled with anger and sorrow. They spoke of betrayal, of suffering, of a malevolent force that had claimed their talents and their lives. Holly realized with horror that the studio was not just haunted, but cursed. The more she tried to resist, the stronger the presence became. It fed off her fear, her despair, her desperation to create. The spirits of the past artists, all consumed by the same force, began to manifest around her. They reached out with spectral hands, their eyes hollow and filled with torment. Holly felt her own sanity slipping as the studio became a nightmarish prison. Desperate to escape, Holly sought out the local historian, hoping to find answers. The historian, an elderly woman named Edith, listened to Holly's tale with a grave expression. She explained that the studio had been built by a renowned sculptor who had delved into dark arts to perfect his craft. He had bound the spirits of his predecessors to the studio, using their talents to fuel his own creations. When he died, the curse remained, trapping every artist who dared to work there. Edith warned Holly that the only way to break the curse was to confront the malevolent force directly. She gave Holly an ancient, handwritten journal filled with rituals and incantations. Holly returned to the studio, determined to free herself and the trapped spirits. As she performed the rituals, the air grew thick with tension. The voices grew louder, the shadows darker. Suddenly, the room was filled with a blinding light. A malevolent force, a twisted, spectral figure, appeared before her. Its eyes burned with an unnatural fire, its form shifting and contorting. Holly felt its power pressing down on her, suffocating her. But she stood her ground, chanting the incantations with all her might. The figure screamed, a sound that echoed through the studio and beyond. The sculptures around her began to crack and crumble, the spirits within them finally finding release. The voice lashed out, trying to silence her, but Holly's determination was stronger. With one final, powerful incantation, the figure shattered, its essence dissipating into the air. The studio fell silent, the oppressive weight lifted. Holly collapsed to the floor, exhausted but victorious. The spirits of the past artists, now free, appeared before her one last time. They thanked her, their forms dissolving into the light. Holly knew she had not only saved herself, but also the souls of those who had been trapped for so long. In the days that followed, Holly worked to transform the studio into a place of light and creativity. The dark energy was gone, replaced by a sense of peace and inspiration. As she sculpted, she felt the true essence of her talent flowing through her, untainted by the malevolent force that had once controlled her. The Spectral Sculptor's studio was now her sanctuary, a place where the past and present harmonized to create true works of art. Holly's triumph over the malevolent force in the studio didn't just mark the end of a terrifying chapter in her life, it also signaled the beginning of an unprecedented creative period. With each passing day, her confidence and skill flourished. Word of her extraordinary works began to spread beyond the Isle of Wight, attracting the attention of art critics and collectors from far and wide. One day, as Holly worked on a new commission, she noticed a faint, silvery glow emanating from one of the far corners of the studio. Intrigued, she approached it cautiously, half expecting another ghostly encounter. Instead, she found a hidden door, its outline barely visible against the stone wall. With a mix of curiosity and trepidation, she pushed it open. The door revealed a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Grabbing a flashlight, Holly ventured down, each step creaking underfoot. The air grew colder, and the smell of damp earth filled her nostrils. At the bottom of the stairs, she found a small, stone chamber filled with old, dusty crates and shelves lined with various sculpting tools and materials. As she rummaged through the crates, she uncovered sketches and journals belonging to the previous sculptors. The drawings depicted strange and otherworldly sculptures, far beyond anything she had seen before. The journals detailed their experiences, filled with accounts of supernatural encounters, creative struggles, and ultimately their descent into madness under the influence of the malevolent force. Among the journals, Holly discovered one that stood out. It was bound in dark leather, its pages filled with intricate sketches and detailed notes. The name on the first page sent a chill down her spine: Ambrose Blackwood, the original owner of the studio and the one who had unleashed the curse. As Holly read through Blackwood's journal, she learned of his obsession with capturing the essence of life in his sculptures. He had turned to dark rituals, believing he could trap the souls of the living within his works to achieve true artistic immortality. The journal also contained his final entry, where he detailed a ritual he believed would grant him ultimate power but had instead led to his demise and the curse upon the studio. Holly realized that Blackwood's dark practices had left a residual energy in the studio, which had drawn in and corrupted the talents of subsequent artists. Determined to prevent such a fate for anyone else, she decided to perform a counter-ritual to cleanse the studio of Blackwood's lingering malevolence. She gathered the necessary ingredients and followed the instructions meticulously, inscribing protective symbols on the walls and chanting incantations late into the night. As she completed the ritual, a fierce wind swept through the studio, extinguishing the candles and plunging the room into darkness. Holly felt an intense pressure building around her, as if the studio itself was resisting the cleansing. Just when she thought she couldn't bear it any longer, the pressure released with a resounding crack. A burst of light filled the studio, and Holly saw the spectral figure of Ambrose Blackwood, his face twisted in rage and desperation. He lunged at her, but an invisible barrier held him back. Holly stood her ground, continuing the incantation until Blackwood's figure began to dissolve. "You cannot destroy me," he hissed. "I am eternal." Holly's voice wavered, but she pressed on. With a final, powerful word, Blackwood's figure shattered into a million fragments of light, which slowly dissipated into the air. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a serene calm. Exhausted, Holly collapsed to the floor, feeling a profound sense of peace wash over her. She knew that Blackwood's curse was finally broken. The studio, once a place of darkness and torment, was now truly free. In the weeks that followed, Holly's work took on a new dimension. Her sculptures radiated a unique blend of grace and intensity, capturing the attention of the art world like never before. Exhibitions of her work were held in prestigious galleries, and her name became synonymous with brilliance and resilience. Visitors to the studio often remarked on the sense of tranquility and inspiration that seemed to pervade the space. Holly would smile, knowing that the studio's true essence had finally been restored. The Spectral Sculptor's studio, once a prison for tormented souls, was now a beacon of artistic freedom and creativity. As Holly continued to create, she occasionally felt a faint, comforting presence beside her, as if the spirits of the past artists were watching over her, their talents and passions now united with hers in a harmonious legacy. She knew that their stories, their struggles, and their triumphs were an inseparable part of her own journey, guiding her hands as she sculpted a future filled with promise and light. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please don't forget to like, and even better, like and subscribe. Thank you very much, and I hope you have had or have a great day.